everybody, real quick before this gets started, I just wanted to let you know that the visual is not working. It didn't export right, but I do have the audio, so we're just going to have to do with the audio today. Thank you. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to Magnify the Maker podcast. Today marks the year of my rebap day, my first rebap day. And basically, I'm making it a whole celebration because, yes, I am that girl that celebrates her rebaptism day because we're born again. Why not celebrate that? This is the birthday that really matters. Anyways, kind of jokingly, kind of not, I am really proud of literally not just me, but like God. Like, I'm just so proud of God. Like, you have no idea how much growth has taken place in my heart and just with the relationship that me and God have. When you're seeing this, it's not going to be the day of my rebap day. My rebap day is January 28th, which is today. So I'm filming, but I'm filming like 2 weeks in advance. And just because I'm not sharing my whole testimony yet doesn't mean that this is not, able to testify to his goodness and to his faithfulness, to his will, to his greater will for you. And so, I'm going to get into that a little bit. And then we have a huge topic to discuss around the fear and the awe of God, which is the season's subject, the season's topic. And then at the end, I'm going to leave you with something so special, and I hope that it will really propel you and grow you. And I do believe that if you take it seriously at the end of this, it will act as a gift for you. So stay tuned. Sorry if my little story is boring to you, but try to stay with me. So, to give a little backstory of where I was at mentally, I was just not in a good place at all. I had gotten broken up with from a really serious relationship, and it took me rock bottom in order to really invite God in and be at my end all. I need God, and he actually intervened. So in this point in time, I had been searching for comfort in basically a lot of the wrong places. I was heartbroken still, even after 6 months. I think it's common for you to still feel that. At the same time, I wanted to detach from this person. I really did. And I didn't know this because you kind of just go throughout life in survival mode when you're in a breakup. And so I think I was really going throughout life in survival mode, and I didn't really give much self-awareness or thought into, I may be using blank as comfort, and that is worldly, that is not good. And this was like a whole bunch of different things for me, which I'm not going to get into right now. But the point is, I was at a really hard time in my life. And in this time, I got this vision, which visions are so powerful, and I pray that God will reveal himself to you through dreams and visions, because the visions that God gives, not visions that you think, are like God-given, but visions that it's like, okay, I didn't know it like in present moment when I had the vision, but weeks after it revealed that this vision was from God type of thing. So maybe when you have visions and dreams, you don't know if it's actually from God, but over time you will see that it's from God or it's not from God. It's basically visions that stick, and then evidences for that vision that have really come together. So for example, I had this vision of me getting baptized in the ocean by my life coach, Rachel. And my life coach, Rachel, at the time, she was a counselor, a Christian counselor. And I had to go to her right after my breakup because I needed a soul expert to help me through all of these emotions, because it was the first major breakup that I have ever experienced. And I was really, really struggling. And so throughout that whole year, she stuck with me through thick and thin. And she's just such a blessing. She really is. And she was baptizing me in my vision. And in my vision, I heard my grandpa whistle and angels like crying and like singing and cheering for me after I got up from the water. And in this vision, it was so real. Like I felt rebaptized. I felt it. It was just a vision. And after the vision, I was like, yeah, that would be, great. Let me just fly me and Rachel down to the beach. Like, I live in Ohio, so there's no beaches around. I didn't, see a river. I didn't see a creek. So I knew that if this were to happen, it would need to be an ocean. And so I just kind of let it go because I was like, yeah, if that works out, it works out. Maybe eventually in my life I can take her to the beach and we can do that. But I kind of put it out of my mind. And then a couple weeks after, she posts on Facebook that she is one of the speakers at this retreat at Siesta Key. And as I saw this post, my mom actually called me because she saw the post at the same time. And so I was looking at this post, getting ready to text my mom and being like, oh my gosh, because I have previously told her about my vision. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we need to make this happen. And then she calls me right in the middle of me texting her. And she's like, did you see what Rachel posted? And I was like, oh my gosh, that even alone is a God thing. Just me and her seeing it at the same time. And we were in separate rooms. So we weren't like on our phones together, so that was crazy. And it just went to show that like God will work out everything for your good. And sometimes he'll intervene and give you these dreams and visions. And he works in a multitude of ways. It's not just dreams and visions, but he really like spoke to me that he intervened because he cared about me so much. He cared about my mental health. He cared about my heartbreak. He cared about what things I was using for vices, for comfort. He cared about me. And it was in that moment that I really wanted to take God serious. I didn't want to keep kind of brushing him off and putting him in a category. I've spoken about this in one of my episodes on Magnify the Maker podcast, how we sometimes, actually, it might be a 5-minute message that I spoke about. Anyways, it's on here somewhere. But I spoke about how sometimes we just put him in this magazine category of religion or like spirituality, like when I have time for it. But it was in that moment that I realized he needs to be my whole magazine. He needs to be the title. He needs to be the front page. He needs to be the front cover. He needs to be the back cover. He needs to be for my whole life. He needs to be there and present and tangible. And so that really started my journey of, oh my gosh, he is real. Like, I could not have done that on my own. That wasn't just a little vision of, oh, this could be. It was a kind of like a, what are those called? Like a prequel, maybe, of what God had planned for me. And so in that moment, when I had the vision, I wanted to just leave everything and go to the ocean. And finally, it came together weeks later, and I was able to. And so going on that journey, going on that little conference, the retreat, it was so eye-opening. It was like I was coming home to myself. I was coming back to myself. That was kind of the start of this rebaptism. So the rebaptism for me was so important, and that's why I think I just really honor this day a lot, and I want to celebrate this day because it was really like a homecoming for me, because I think I kind of got lost along the way a little bit, like my inner child and my core got lost along the way. And I finally came home to that. I came home to God. And so that's why I love this day so much. And I'm glad that I was able to share my little story with you. Anyways, moving on a little bit, changing gears, I wanted to remind you and introduce Charity Water. Basically, I set up a GoFundMe for Charity Water. Each season, I'll be doing a charity. I'll be picking a charity from charities that I think God really has his hand on and has really spoken to me and urged me to share. So I create a GoFundMe. I set it for, I think, a $7,000 goal donation, and all proceeds from that will go straight to Charity Water. So you can look at my description and find more about that. Also, if you want to support this podcast, I also have a little GoFundMe for that. So, anyways, moving on, I want to talk about obedience. I think even the obedience of answering God in that moment of my story, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am today without obedience, without obeying God. We talk about, obedience all the time, but I think we have a misconstrued version of obedience, and that stems from parenting. Your parent tells you to do something, and you don't want to do it because it's your parent, and you want to do your own way. I was very, very much like that. I hated when people told me what to do, and I still don't really like it. But through my experiences, I have learned that it is in my best interest, and I only got that when I was old enough to get it. Like when I had those experiences to demonstrate that truth. So just because you don't know exactly what obedience is and what obedience looks like for you, that is completely okay. That's a part of the process. I had to go throughout my own process too. Even after I got rebaptized, there was a whole sanctification process that had to take place. And if I'm honest, it's still happening. Everybody is on their sanctification process their whole life, because we're not perfect until God says, I'm done, and we actually get reunited into heaven. And when you understand the fear of God, the awe of God, when you respect God in a different position than being scared of him, when you truly demonstrate in your life that you fear God, you're going to be able to listen for his instructions, know why, and proceed immediately in obedience. When you have the holy fear of God, you don't want anything hidden. This could be secrets that you keep from other people. Maybe you're scared of punishment. Maybe you're scared that they're going to change their mind on you. Maybe you're scared that they're going to give up on you. And I think that's a big thing with God that prevents us from going to God and exposing our secrets. I remember the time that I finally was able to detach completely from all of the dark things in my heart, and I was able to communicate that with the people closest to me, unshamefully, if that's a word. I think so. I didn't have shame in saying what I was struggling with, and most of all, going to God with every single thing that I was experiencing in my heart. Not just the happy times, but also the things that literally lurked and destroyed my heart. Temptations, fleshly desires. This can be so many things, secrets that you're ashamed of. And I remember this one time where I completely broke free from all of which was holding me back. And it's a continuous process. It really is. But that continuous discipline and practice of taking everything up to God and exposing it to the light, that's what really heals you. That's what really unifies you to God. because you're saying, I'm not scared of you. I respect you enough because I have faith and I know that you will heal me, that you will fix this, that you will take care of this for me, that you have got me. And so when we bring everything to God and bring everything to the surface, it has no hold on you anymore. And this is an act of obedience. This is evidence that you trust him and you obey him. This is just a consistent action. Like, it's continuous. I still struggle. Like, I don't think there's going to be a day on earth that I don't struggle with negative thoughts, or that I don't struggle with negative feelings, or feelings that I'm not good enough, or anything and everything that is evil, we're going to struggle with because of sin. And you can read about that, where it stemmed from in Genesis. But I think when Jesus says that he is the light and that he will give life to sustain us, he is speaking like truth. Like, I was going to say he's speaking like so truth. That doesn't make sense. But he speaks truth when he says that. And I only know that. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to experience it and receive that. So I think that this practice that you can implement in your life to obey him and to let him know that you trust him with every single thing. If you're struggling with like holds on yourself, if you feel like something is holding you back, or you just need breakthrough, some healing, if you want to walk into this life of light, of purpose, of joy, of fulfillment, then I would really encourage you to implement this practice of consistent exposing of light. So you're exposing it to Jesus. And since Jesus is that light source, he is going to shine. He's able to shine on it. He's not able to shine on that very thing in your heart if it's in your heart, hidden in the dark, deep spots of your heart, and if you don't bring it to life, So when you do that, he is able to hold your hand and walk you through that. He walks with you through it all, through everything. So do not feel shameful. And I know it's easier said than done, but there's nothing to be shameful for. There is much, much worse that Jesus has seen and that he has healed and dealt with and cared for. And so that's one thing. When you bring everything to God, it's literally like this reunification of you in God, this healer, this light. It's a reunification, and that's true healing. And humility is truly the key to unlocking obedience. You have to have humility to accept what he is instructing you to do and why he's instructing you to do it. It's a position of your heart that you have to be in to understand why he's asking you of this. And sometimes maybe you don't know why he's asking you to do this. Like, I've always seen kind of the rules in the Bible as like old traditions or old things that previous people have done, and times have changed and stuff. Like, before coming to God and this reverence and awe of him and this respect, I thought that it was basically like a to-do and not to-do book. And there is this sense of judgment with that I didn't like, because previously I said, I don't like being told what to do, so why would I listen to a book, But God had to break me in order to heal me, He had to bring me to, okay, I've tried everything that I have, I've tried everything that I could get my hands on, and nothing seems to heal me. And this book seemed to heal me, like, instantly. Like, it's unbelievable what God does in his word. And so why would I disregard what this book tells me to do and tells me not to do and to abstain from when it has this power in it to heal me? That is the respect, and that's the awe of God. James 4 says, "What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what gives you pleasure. You adulterers, don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? I say it again, if you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of God. Don't you think the scriptures have no meaning? They say that God is passionate and that the Spirit He has placed within us should be faithful to Him, and He gives generously. He gives grace generously. As the scriptures say, God oppresses the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So humble yourselves before God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come close to God, and He will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world. Let there be tears for what you have done. Let there be sorrow and deep grief. Let there be sadness instead of laughter and gloom instead of joy. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. This just speaks to me so much, because what I was talking about like He had to break me, He had to let me experience what sin can really do to your mental health, to your behavior, to your life, to the people around you. And it brought deep grief. It brought sorrow. It brought all of these things. It brought tears. It brought sadness instead of laughter and gloom instead of joy. And then verse 10 says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. That's it. That's what He commands of us. He commands that we humble ourselves before Him, and then He is able to lift you up and to lift your sadness up into joy, into laughter, and to wipe your tears away from your face and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. Verse 11 continues to say, don't speak evil against each other. Dear brothers and sisters, if you criticize and judge each other, then you are criticizing and judging God's law. But your job is to obey the law, not to judge whether it applies to you. God alone, who gave the law, is the judge. He alone has the power to save or to destroy. So what right do you have to judge your neighbor? This goes into the rule book, I think it's so easy to fall into that judgment of, oh, she's not doing this. She's not following God's command. She's not obeying and stuff. But it's like, okay, you're judging the judger. You aren't obeying God too. So I think God alone, it doesn't matter about what we think about other people, because they are on their own journey in their own relationship with God. So who are we? It's basically saying, so what right do you have to judge your neighbor? Who are you to judge the other person? It's God who is ultimately going to save or to destroy, because He alone has the power to do that. We don't have any type of power. We only have power because the Spirit of God is in us. So then it goes to say, look here, you who say today or tomorrow, we are going to a certain town and will stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here to stay a little while, then it's gone. What you ought to say is, if the Lord wants to, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you are boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil. Remember, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it. So this is warning people in disobeying God
that conviction that you feel, it saves, it's an opportunity to save you. Like, I think of conviction now. I used to think of conviction of this like nagging thing. It's like, oh, just I want to get away from God. I want to give in to my pleasure desires. I want to do this, so I'm gonna shut him up. But it's like he will intervene at this point to, you cannot escape from God. No matter where you're escaping to in the world, you're not going to be able to escape from God. And so knowing that conviction, it's like we have a choice still to listen to it or to disregard it. And it's saying that it's a sin. It's what prevents you from having that fruitful relationship with God, to have that fruitful life that you enjoy, that you love, that you laugh in. Obedience is the foundation of reunification. So John 7:16 through 49, it talks about how we have to kind of detach and be open to Jesus. I think it's interesting that God, he will give us things to obey him, but there's a detachment that has to take place in order to successfully obey him. There's a detachment of what we want to do, how we want it, what we want. You have to kind of detach from your own desire and your own plans to be able to fully obey him. Verse 16, it says, "So Jesus told them, 'My message is not my own. It comes from God who sent me. Anyone who wants to do the will of God will know whether my teaching is from God or is merely my own. Those who speak for themselves want glory only for themselves, but a person who seeks to honor the one who sent him speaks truth, not lies. Moses gave you this law, but none of you obeys it. In fact, you are trying to kill me.' The crowd replied, 'You are demon-possessed. Who's trying to kill you?' Jesus replied, 'I did one miracle on the Sabbath, and you were amazed. But you work on the Sabbath too, when you obey Moses' law of circumcision. If the correct time for circumcising your son falls on the Sabbath, you go ahead and do it, as if not to break the law of Moses. So why should you be angry with me for healing a man on the Sabbath? Look beneath the surface so you can judge correctly.'" So Jesus recognizes how humans have so much attachment to ourselves, to each other. Like, we just love to attach and almost be like a leech onto somebody. And I know this because in my previous relationship, I was so codependent. I was so attached, and it took God to help me detach from it in order to really judge and understand what I wanted and what I truly desired. And that was to desire all things for God. What is God's desires for me? And Jesus says that you need to look beneath the surface. Like, I wasn't looking beneath the surface because I had my rose-colored glasses on. How we look beneath the surface is basically to be open and receiving Jesus. Like, that's how we're going to detach from the world and be able to attach from something that actually matters. He's better than like any type of gold, any type of value that we have in the world. So why would we waste our time on attaching to the world and what the world has to offer? Because ultimately what we attach to is going to reap that type of reward, that value of reward. And I can only say that because I was attached to the world. And the world was giving me, as my reward, it was giving me suffering. It was giving me nothing. It was giving me more tears. It was giving me more sorrow. It was giving me more fuel for the temptation, more temptations. And it felt like I was going so far from God. And so that's what it talks about when, he says, hate the world. Like, the world's going to hate you for detaching from it, but he promises that he will give you that type of reward that actually has value in heaven. And the good thing, because of God's grace and God's mercy on us and his forgiveness, he gives everybody a chance. And this chance can look like a test. Everybody will be tested on the obedience and on the fear of God. There's a bunch of little details that you could study from Abraham's story, and it's all in Genesis. And I think it's just such a beautiful story because it has so many good learning points, if you know what I mean. Like, it just has so many good topics that we could talk about. But one specifically is when Abraham finally receives his son. His son's name is Isaac. And this is the son that's going to be super fruitful, right? So he is basically like on this spiritual high. It's easy to have faith in God when everything's working out together, everything's coming together. You're in that season that God promised to you. And then he sends a little test. He sends a little plot twist. And Abraham's plot twist in this season was to sacrifice his son as an offering. I'm sure he was kind of caught off guard because it's okay, God, what's going on? You finally gave me what you promised me, and now you want me to sacrifice this and kill it? So that's a little bit of the backstory. Genesis 22 is such a beautiful story. So just kind of lose yourself in this story. I just want you to be open and receptive to these words in this story. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. The next day, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day of the journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulder, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. We have the fire and the wood, the boy said, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered. And they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told them to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on the top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by his thorns in his thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number. like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me." Then they returned the servants and traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. Because of faith and because of that trust that Abraham had in God, that God's way is better than my way, he was able to bless Abraham even more. So after you pass that test that God graciously will give you, if you pass that, he has the opportunity to multiply that and to really reward you for your faith and for your obedience. There's 5 parts that you can kind of take and look throughout your life through the lens of these 5 things, and to be honest with yourself and to humble yourself and see kind of more clearly on how God would see your life through these 5 aspects. And these five aspects are when you see these commands that God gives in the Bible, or when he tells you something that you should do you act immediately on it? I love Abraham because he acted immediately. It was the next day he was going on the mountain, It was the next day. He didn't sit with it and be like, yeah, I don't know if I heard correctly, it's been 2 weeks and God has told me to do this and I've just been procrastinating it. That is not something to be boasting about or flaunting around. We do that to where it's not immediate. When God gives you an instruction, he expects you to obey it immediately, because if he's giving you that instruction, it's probably it's go time. He needs to have you obey him in that moment type of thing. Second is even when it doesn't make sense. So you're obeying God even when it doesn't make sense really to you. Even when the lines are a little bit blurred to where you can't understand within your own understanding of why God is giving you this command. This also goes into Abraham kind of relying and asking God and leaning on God's understanding of it all. The third is even when it hurts. Fourth is without self-benefit. Abraham had to have this humility in him to be able to give it all up to God. It comes down to humility. And then fifth is till completion. Abraham had to carry it out into completion. He didn't hesitate on putting the knife up and getting ready. He didn't hesitate. He wasn't doubting, second guessing. And you could hear that story and say, because I think the first time I heard that story, I was like, did Abraham really love his son? Because that's crazy. I couldn't imagine my mom and dad actually killing me if God told them to. What? But it goes to show that Abraham loved God even more than the blessing God gave him. And that goes into loving the Creator more than you love creation, praising the Creator, attaching to the Creator, and detaching to creation. Anyways, those are the 5 little lenses that you can look at and be aware when God does give you something to obey, to kind of have that checklist of, okay, am I doing this immediately? It's kind of steps in how to go about this obedience. The angel said, now that I know that you fear God, you truly fear God. So that's what it means to fear God. Literally is to love God more than you love anything else. So with that, I'm going to close it out. I hope to see you next weekend. A little reminder, everything is linked down in the bio, in the little description box. So if you want to donate to Charity Water, if you want to donate to this podcast, if you want to follow me on the social media accounts, you can go in the description box and find all of that. See you next week.
One for the body, two for the soul.